Hey folks, it's Lindsey Huddleston back at it again, the SPS Edge show with my great co-host, Mr. Terry McCord Jr. And of course, we got Mr. Orlando Watkins, Coach Orlando Watkins, keeping us out here in the world. We always call him Houston because he keeps us connected no matter where he is on the planet. He's keeping us grounded. But Terry, we're back with another show, man. And I'm excited, man. I'm excited about the topics that we have. I'm excited that we get this platform to sit and share on. And man, I'm excited about you and your growth and the things you have going. And I'm also excited about a new sponsor that's come on. That's Easy Work. Shout out to my guy, Bruce Tony with Easy Work Apparel. You've seen me with that when I was down at the Motor City Smoothie Company in Detroit. Shout out to Chuck Bailey. But Easy Work is coming on board to support the movement, and we want to support them too. Some great clothing, some great things coming from Bruce, Toby, and Easy Work. So I want to thank them for their support of the SPS Edge Show podcast. And also got to give a shout out to my guys. The streets are watching. That is Don Houston and Clarence Sumo. That is my guy, no doubt, holding it down, always keeping things together, and I appreciate that. So with that, Terry, let's talk about what we're going to be discussing. Put it out there. You can kind of kick us off, man. We get going with these things.
So, breaking news coming into this game. First, MSU Maryland. Coming in this week, their time was TBD. To be determined, and they weren't sure if they were going to play because the week before Maryland's game was canceled because of COVID results and positive COVID tests within their team, and their game got canceled against Ohio State. And so now we come into this week, their game's canceled against Michigan State, a game that MSU was looking to bounce back after a tough loss to Indiana. But I mean, it got to the point where their head coach, Mike Locksley, was even he announced that he tested positive. So Maryland is in kind of the situation that Wisconsin was in, where they're just trying to get their players healthy. They're not really too worried about competing, but I mean, players' health first. And I'm glad they're taking the right precautions to try to get this thing rolling for them.
Yeah, you're right, man. When you hear from the perspective of Coach Mel Tucker, who's very good friends with Coach Mike Locksley at Maryland, and then they're talking and going back and forth. But I had a feeling we were going to get the most professional response because we were in a press conference with them on Tuesday. And I just had a feeling, he said, hey, we're doing everything we can to prepare to play. But I had a feeling it was kind of like, no. And especially when they said, hey, 2 days of not practicing, that's not good for college football. You can't not practice. Unlike basketball, maybe the time off, the rest is one thing, but you cannot practice with football on any level and then expect to go and compete at a very high level. So that's what it is. And the NCAA has said, they're not going to make up the game. It's just kind of a wash. And I just think that it's a little bit more what this COVID life is. And I'll say this, Terry, I've always been very passionate about people masking up and keeping their social distance and us doing the right thing. But I really want to say I feel good about how, with the right kind of effort, we're getting through this. We're not really going to talk about too much today, but we have the high school MHSA looking at returning back to practice and sports December 9th. So we're finding a way through it, but you're getting these, I won't even call them hiccups, but byproducts of the pandemic era, which you may have a game that was scheduled to go. And I'm the only thing I feel good about is first that the players aren't playing so that their safety is being put as paramount. But, I hate that, it would have been a game that was an away game, so I wouldn't have been at Spartan Stadium to cover it. But, it looks like they'll be probably back against Northwestern the following week, and we'll be able to see something. But, but this is what we're dealing with, Terry. I mean, we started off this podcast, early on talking about COVID and how it affects our lives. We started this early on. I mean, when I talk about the Streets Are Talking, which is where this is airing also at www.streetsartalking.com with Clarence Babar and Mr. Carman, Don Houston representing, this was born out of the COVID pandemic impacting our lives. And now we're seeing it. Remember, we didn't even think we would see college football. College football got back on. Now we're seeing new head coach and Mel Tucker getting his thing going, the back and forth. And then all of a sudden, another Big Ten team is shut down by the COVID. But they're going to do what they got to do. People are going to just make sure that everyone's straight and move on. And I'm a little inspired by it because because I'm still a sports fan at heart, man. And I'm feeling that if we're doing the right thing, if we're keeping healthy as best as possible, kudos to Michigan State, and hopefully this can stay the case. No COVID tests, having to shut them down. So you see most programs are getting it right. And that gives me inspiration to know that we can probably, going forward, live a life with sports during this pandemic time, because I'm really hoping that even when they talk about the second wave coming and we being amongst it, and it's a tragedy. It's a tragedy, Terry, when we hear about the loss of life and what's happening. But overall, I think we're moving through it. And I think I'm saying that with a thought of compassion. It's not saying look through it, but unfortunately, it won't be an MSU versus Maryland game. But I'm glad that the topic is about health. And if there's anything else you want to say on it, let's hear that. But if not, that probably will take us to our next topic, which is the NCAA tournament being in the bubble in this COVID time. You want to share anything about that?
I think you kind of covered it. I feel like the whole thing of not being able to practice during the week and taking weeks off. I know how important scheme and game planning is for the sport of football,
Somebody
and
can
I
get
see
hurt
that.
real bad. Somebody can get
Right.
physically hurt along with COVID, but really hurt real bad if they're not schemed up right and had that practice time. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, same thing with the NFL. We're seeing teams where they shut down, like my Browns. They had to shut down their facility a couple times this week because of
Wow.
COVID cases. And I mean, if they're doing that in the NFL, and like I mean, the NFL, you kind of know what you're gonna do, but college, I mean, with MSU and with Maryland and these teams that are like getting better as the week goes, they need to have those preparation weeks to try and get that win. And so I
Yeah.
think just seeing Maryland have to miss those days. I don't think they would have had their best output on Saturday. So I mean, it gives MSU that buy of like if they beat them, oh they didn't practice, they didn't do this. So I mean, it
Yeah.
keeps MSU hungry for
That's
Northwestern
a
at
good
home.
point. That's a good point when you talk about how people will rate the win, even if and the NCAA didn't or Big Ten didn't allow for it to be a forfeit. But you're absolutely right. But that's that plan in this time of COVID, and then it transitions right over, man. When we talk about the NCAA tournament, and people pushing forward and looking at a bubble type atmosphere. I think that's the next step in saying we're working our way through it. But a tournament in one location, I wonder what it'll be like. I mean, you get an idea. And like you said, the NBA, kind of perfected at this point. But I guess it's great to have had that blueprint there the whole time, and people can look at the NCAA tournament and say, okay, that can be a viable option. We all know how impactful March Madness is. What do you think?
I just hope, and pray that college basketball, the NCAA, uses the amount of resources that the NBA used. I mean, we're seeing different venues for the NBA. They're coming in using two different courts to have these games. I mean, because we know, I mean, the round of 68 and then the round of 64, then 32, a lot of basketball is being played in one city. So, I mean, you hope that to keep, to put on restrictions with social distancing and maybe allowing family later on like the NBA did, and
Sure.
maybe and hopefully having like different areas where guys can be in hotels and similar protocol that the NBA had about daily symptom checker, seeing about your fever if you have a fever or not, and you just hope that they use all the resources because the NBA was like a guinea pig. I mean, they're gonna try it out, they're trying to finish their season, and
Right.
so guys like basketball where you can be in like the same area and it's not as much prep time as football, as you said earlier. I
Right.
feel like it's something that can be done, but it's a big commitment that needs to be made by everyone.
Well, I mean, the sigh of relief I get when we talk about the potential of the NCAA following the NBA's lead is they got money, man, and then the universities got money too. So you got these two different entities just like that. Because with the NBA, for the most part, they're like the organization that brings it together, but those teams have
Right.
money. So the money is out there, and I think they're going to look at it in the same way. They want to protect their investment. They want to make sure there's some, health integrity in college basketball and what's going on. And then let's talk about the bottom line, man. It's about a lot of money, man. It's a lot of money to be made. It's a lot of money that got caught up and got lost when there wasn't a season. You just think
Oh
back,
yeah.
we're talking about Cassius and Xavier in the draft. I just remember when the season ended. I'm saying it was over during the
Hmm.
Big Ten tournament. I remember being there March 13th in Indianapolis. Right, and Indianapolis is well suited for it. If any place is suited for a bubble type atmosphere, is Indianapolis, because it is very uh, uh, friendly in the sense of being able to connect and put pieces together. I mean, from the
Okay.
administration, how the city does work at City Hall, to how the city is structured to be able to have that kind of movement, man. So being down there on March 13th when the Big Ten, canceled this game, of course, we ended, the college basketball season. It seems like a
Hmm.
lifetime, but it's like this new world that we've been living in, Terry. And here we are right now. The NBA draft has come and gone. We've seen it happen. We saw it happen virtually and whatnot. And then also we talk about being at this point right now where we're looking at the NBA bubble style basketball being played. I think they're going to be able to pull it off. I think they're going to work lock and step. I mean, think about it. These guys were working together last night, the NBA and colleges, right? The NBA and these organizations, right? Knowing that, these young men are being able to transition. It's the same type of relationship. It's not like these people are new and they're going to just pass that handbook over. I think it's good because we will be able to get to see some basketball. I think we're going to be very appreciative of it, even if we're not able to get on the road and be at the Final Four like most people would. I mean, I was ready to roll, man. The Final Four was scheduled to be down in Indianapolis, baby. I was ready to make that trip. You know what we have to do, Terry, we have to continue to be mindful. I mean, lives are being lost. The COVID is real. It seems, thankfully, we got through probably the most critical time from a political standpoint when all the things were heightened and raised, but we still have Donald Trump, laying in the way or looming or whatever or not. But we had all this other social justice, emotional angst going on in the country. And I know you felt it. I know I felt it, man. It doesn't feel like it's like that right now. And it's a good feeling. So I say all that to say, to be able to see college basketball, even if it's in a bubble, Terry, I think is a great thing. And I'm hoping, like I look at it, I hope a lot of people look at it, that we'll be very appreciative of the fact that we'll have it, no matter if it's not the way we normally want it, because we know with the word, everything can shut down.
Exactly. And I think that's one thing that athletes have to overcome is being in that mindset where things can keep rolling and you want to keep playing, but any given day things could be all shut down. Like I mean, Whitmer could, like in Michigan standpoint right now, could be like, full lockdown. Everything's closed again. And things open are essential things. So I mean, just having that mindset of coming in and playing the season, because I mean Michigan State's basketball schedule was just released and they're all excited for tip off and getting the season kicked off. But I mean, you still got to work through it. You got to remain optimistic, because you're an athlete. I mean, even in games, things happen and it may not go your way, but you always have to be optimistic. I mean, I wouldn't say like really treat it like a game, but in that mindset though, when things don't go your way, you always got to keep pushing and look for opportunities to make the most of what you got.
No, you're right. You're right about that. And imagine that here we are talking, and past news is Coach Tom Izzo had COVID. He's still in quarantine right now. So, maybe it would have been, you think it would have been more of a headline had it happened during the tournament? It would have probably been more critical, because if he's out there and they hit him with the Nick Saban, like, no, you can't practice or be here, but Nick Saban was able to get around that somehow. But, you look at, I just think that it put everyone on notice, man. But I'm still, encouraged by the fact that we can possibly see something like this happen, man. So we talk about the NCAA bubble, man. We probably could spend a bulk of the time, talking about the NBA, and what's that's been like, because there's a lot that's happened with the draft. There's a lot of different aspects. We have the local part too, when you talk about guys like Xavier Tillman and Cassius Winston. So we'll definitely better get into it. I just want to take a moment again and shout out our new sponsor, Easy Work. Shout out to my guy, brother Bruce Tony, Toby holding it down, doing good things. So with that, I want to keep putting it out there, man. Some great things are happening with the Streets of Talking podcast. It's great to be able to be there. We're on at 12 on Saturday and Sunday at www.thestreetsoftalking.com. Terry, it'd be great if you could just pop on and hear your voice to see how far you've come from just being a bright young man at Eastern High School handling business, transitioning on to his college days, and being able to have his voice be heard and have an impact with the words he used, inspiring others, including myself. So, man, you've been putting your homework in, talking about this NBA draft, 2020 NBA draft, man. Let's kick off to Terry McCord Jr. NBA draft profile, man. Take us to this draft, man, and see what's going on. And when we get a chance to get to, some guys we know, we can talk a little bit more about that. But, okay, how about this if we do a little audible? Before we do the NBA draft, because it's a lot with that, how about we lead up to it talking about the big trade with Chris Paul and the Phoenix Suns? How about we do that? Because to your point, then we can finish talking about the draft and some other things in particular. So if we could just switch to talk about Chris Paul. That was, that probably was the most breaking news around draft time, other than who went where. But, Chris Paul, let's talk about Chris Paul to the Phoenix Suns and his legacy.
So, I mean, Chris Paul being traded from the Houston Rockets to the Thunder in the beginning of the season, that whole feud with James Harden or whatever, and we see how that's going for Harden right now. But Chris Paul, some people think that this is farewell kind of like season and like easing his way to retirement at the Thunder. The Thunder had a 0.2 percentage to make the playoffs last season. They get a fifth seed in the Western Conference. So Chris Paul's playing well and doing well and leading them to a Game 7 loss to the Rockets, but he's playing himself up to that caliber to where like teams are starting to say like, hey, is Chris Paul a player that could help us get over the top? And like he's putting himself in the names of these contending teams GMs are like, hey, can Chris Paul be that guy to put us over the top? So he plays himself into a good company right now. So he's in that good company of where we add him, we'll be good. So he's in the mix of trades, looking to get to a contending team, which ultimately what he wants to do and get his first NBA championship. The Suns are looking, they went 8-0 in the bubble. They're doing really well. Got some key pieces with Kelly Oubre. He didn't play in the bubble, but he was doing well. Ricky Rubio and Javon Carter and DeAndre Ayton. These young players playing well. So Devin Booker, as we know, the last couple of seasons has made it known that he wants to get to the playoffs. Like he wants to contend. He wants to be a playoff caliber team. And it was getting to that point where like a lot of pressure was on the Phoenix organization to get this man some pieces so he can compete at the high level. And so we're seeing Coach Monty Williams get these young players going. And so Chris Paul, having been coached by Monty Williams for the Hornets back in his prime, you know what I mean? So they make that move. They make the move, they trade Oubre, which Oubre is looking to maybe go to the Warriors. I saw some news like 20 minutes ago, maybe.
Wow.
Rubio, they traded Rubio to the Thunder, and then which ultimately Rubio goes back to the Timberwolves. There's a lot of moves with that. So Chris Paul, they move a lot of players over because of his salary right now. He makes quite a bit of money right now. So the Suns had to clear some space and make some moves for Chris Paul to come. So I mean, Chris Paul's on a team. They're young, they're hungry. They got a nice big man inside with Ayton in there, playing really well as of lately in the bubble. Mm-hmm. And hopefully Chris Paul can, get those young guys moving with Coach Monty Williams and relive some of those glory days.
Right. Well, you've done an excellent job, Terry, in kind of laying out the whole backstory of what's going on, even when you tied, Chris Paul back to this earlier player-coach experience with Monty Williams. Shout out to Monty Williams. That's my guy. I've had the pleasure to share with him during times at Michigan State's practice. He's part of the USA family. I was at practice one day with my USA family, my USA basketball, sweatsuit on, and he was there with his. So we got to take a picture and kick it and talk and have great discussion. And he really talked about the perspective of a GM and what they're looking for and how, Michigan State basketball stands out. So fast forward that now to him in this role and what he's done with this young team that really, put people on notice, man, that the Phoenix Suns are nothing to play with. I mean, that came down to that one game, that whole game when, you had Devin Booker rocking Karis LeVert jersey, the Nets version, like, hey, we win so we can get a chance to make a move. And that's what's great about the NBA. I mean, you don't have everybody making a championship run, but it's those stories that were able to inspire us. It was Devin Booker's play. I think I put a little Mexican tape together that concluded with him early on when they were leaving the bubble, him hitting the shot, falling down on his back. And this kid hits, 70 points at the Garden? Give me a break, man. So you talk about what's going on with this Phoenix Suns team, but here's what I'm getting into, and you've done a great job, like I said, outlining. If this is Chris Paul's, a farewell song, if it's his swan song, if it's there, is Chris Paul looking at getting involved in the front office, possibly with the Phoenix Suns? If he's going back to a relationship with someone who was his first coach older on, he said, look, let me get back here and I can be a seasoned vet that can help these young guys. I think it'd be as great as the performance Chris Paul had, I don't think teams will be looking at him to give that all the time, but they're saying he is still good to go. Look what he brings. And not only with him playing, I'll be willing to bet, and I appreciate if I get a text message from you because you watch stuff, frequently. I'll be willing to bet that in the next 2 to 3 seasons, more or less, if Chris Paul wraps up and finds himself affiliated with the, Phoenix Suns. That's the home of Jerry Colangelo, the former chairman of USA Basketball. I mean, things move through the Suns. That's a major political piece in the NBA. That's a respected organization, all the way through basketball. And why wouldn't Chris Paul, NBA Players Association president, why wouldn't he kind of affiliate himself with the Colangelo family or something like that, and getting with Monty Williams? Because I don't think they're looking at saying, hey, man, come in and get us a championship, man. Come in here and pour into these young men. And you can pour into them as a player right beside them, leading them, but potentially as someone who's affiliated with this organization. Because I think every NBA player wants to get down. Now the new cool for these guys, man, is like, okay, I want to own the team. And I'll be willing to bet somebody like Chris Paul is bright enough and smart enough, even having that Carolina connection when you talk about Jordan, to say, okay, where am I going to land? But when you talk about this could be him wrapping up his playing days and the fact that he goes to Phoenix, Phoenix, I'm like, man, it's deeper than rap, baby. It's something to watch. So I think he did an excellent job of pointing that out. And Chris Paul, man, it's so interesting about him. As popular as he is, and I'm a Chris Paul fan, no doubt, he's had somewhat of a controversial career as far as how he was perceived. It's like he comes across with this very clean, image. And I'm not saying anything that he's not. I'm not talking about I know anything negative about him. But then you hear the Rondos of the world make the comment that, oh, he's a difficult guy to deal with. Or you hear these rumblings that, Chris Paul, is no joke. But he's the leader of the Player Association. So I don't care what you say. There's a level of respect. So I think, using that word respect, I'll quote, the great philosopher Birdman, put some respect on Chris Paul's name. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not just an awesome player. He's respected by his peers. I mean, his peers, LeBron, Carmelo, D-Wade. I mean, his peers are the higher top echelon of basketball. And Chris Paul, and I got to say it again on the SPS Edge show, was right there talking to Michael Jordan and talking to all those owners about how we're going to put this bubble together. Chris Paul was significant in that. So that is telling me that Chris Paul has a future interest in continuing an NBA type experience. And I would not be surprised, and Terry's going to agree with me on the SPS show, that if it goes down, he's going to remember and send me a text and say, Lindsay, you're right when you said that, and he gets down. So that was more than a mouthful, but it was great to talk about Chris Paul because there's so many layers to him and what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's one of the best leaders in basketball I've ever seen. I think you got to think about Magic, Stockton, LeBron, and then like Chris Paul. So I mean, I would say like that's like the 4 best leaders we've seen that I can think of right now. And I mean, the Thunder have been making some moves too. I mean, before the draft even started, they had a total of 17 first-round picks or draft picks total from 2020 to 2026. So I mean, they're taking some notes from the Celtics when they made that trade for KG and Pierce and sent them to the Nets, and they used those picks and got Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and bringing more of these players that have been helping them get back to where they should be at. So I think they're taking notes there a little bit and getting all these a load of picks and then bringing people. I kind of question their trade with Al Horford. I don't really think he really fits
about the
what
money,
they're trying to do.
It was about the money too, because Al got a big contract.
Right, and I think with the contract though, I think it was mostly the Sixers winning that one and relieving that room for Harden.
Money off, clearing that money, clearing that debt.
Yeah. So I mean, the Suns got a great pickup in Paul. I hope he stays healthy. That's one of the things that people have been questioning about if he stays healthy. Because I mean, I think that big month period, people don't talk about how everyone loves to say, "Man, LeBron, this is perfectly set up for Bron. He gonna come in and win. Is a guarantee." I think the whole scenario having 5 months off, I think that couldn't have been better for Chris Paul. Because I mean, you got a guy who's resting up and has a history of like kind of wearing himself down a little bit, and then he gets like a big break, and then comes back and is fresh playing. We seeing old glimpses of Chris Paul making these moves through the legs and fadeaway jump shots. I mean, I think the bubble was a good situation for him as well in that trade.
Well, we talked about a long time ago that the expectation was that we were going to see a different kind of basketball and different kind of quote unquote stars in the bubble. Now, the mainstream act, LeBron himself, remained that King James, but the play that we saw from Chris Paul, nobody would have bet on that. And then you take that play and you equate that was equivalent to the play that we saw the Phoenix Suns. So now when you think about bringing that together, I think there's something going to be watched because there's this, I believe, mentality with Monty Williams and the Phoenix Suns. And they're out there, and who knows what kind of impact they're going to have on the West because they're coming out on fire. They are saying they're leaving short of the Miami Heat, who lost in the NBA championship. Short of them, I believe it's the Phoenix Suns that saying, hey, we're the ones you got to watch out for. Yeah, we couldn't stay and go through the playoffs, but we were right on the cusp. So they have all that time, just like the Miami Heat, to go off these 5 months or so and get ready to come back. And they're going to be saying, "Hey, man, I'm ready to go." With that. So
Yeah.
that has been interesting. I got an idea of what we can do with the remainder of our time, because I want to make sure that we're giving our viewers, on the streets of talking.com, they just do. We can talk a little bit more about the draft, particularly some other things that happen in the draft. We'll get into some Michigan State people. And the last thing I want to do is kind of flip back to some topics from somewhat the top of the hour, Terry, and that is recruitment being open for Michigan State football. And I really want to talk about how, if you really think about everything we've been talking about tonight, everything has been about putting yourself in the best position as a player so you can go to the next level. Whether it's in high school to go play college football or basketball, or if it's in college to be able to go to the NBA. And it's kind of like a revolving circle, because then our conversation evolved to Chris Paul, who's probably in the twilight of his career playing, but all the other things that can still go on. So we're going to stay on task with that. We're doing a great job right now. I want to thank again Orlando Watkins for what he's doing. So tell us a little bit more about the drafts and some other things that stood out to you, Terry. You really put some time and effort into that. Talk about this 2020 NBA draft.
I mean, I have two storylines and one kind of like sleeper pick. So one thing that I took away, you see this common theme of like versatility and defense. I mean, like being able to play 1 through the 5, able to switch the pick and roll. Because in the NBA, you see a lot of switching, and so you see guys like
man.
Right, and then you got to play defense. You got to be able to play defense in space. You got to be able to And so I think
that's one key point, and this can be looked at among racial lines, but they talk about a lot of white players not being able to make it and stay in the NBA because of their inability to defend based on physicality, whatever it may be. But I just want to highlight that you're absolutely right about the importance of being able to be that and not just be a liability on defense.
Right, and I think one of the biggest quotes and takeaways that I heard from Jay Billis on there during the coverage, he said the hardest thing of the draft is that they're all rookies. So I mean, it's like you got teams like the Cavs and the Knicks, and the Warriors kind of right now, and the Timberwolves that like would love to draft a veteran player, but you never really know what you're gonna get. So I mean, you see teams like there's two picks that I really loved in this draft, and one was the number 8th pick, the Knicks, which I was hoping the Cavs would get Obi Toppin, but
yeah, Obi Toppin.
I wouldn't be mad. But I mean, the Knicks got him, New York, born and raised kid, no offers. The first thing you can just see the emotion, the passion from this kid. Loving to play the game of basketball, and you hear a lot of rumors like, "Oh, New York, we got to go play with the Knicks." He reacted it in the most positive way possible, like while he's crying and emotional. They're like, "Why is that important to you to wear that jersey and be in New York, back in your hometown?" And he was like, "Because I'm from New York. This is a dream. This is something that I always wanted to do. Rep my home state. We're at my hometown. We weren't playing for that home team." And I think that's the best situation.
And that is something for them to get. They probably wanted to feel that way about Carmelo, but he had kind of came with somewhat of some baggage at the time. And I am a Carmelo fan, but that Obi Toppin, man, I think he's a transcending type player. His size, his ability, his passion, his work ethic. And, again, these guys are these underdogs. So I'm glad that you highlighted Obi Toppin as being a pick, because he was definitely on my radar, has been. And for him to return back home, New York is going to be huge, which is probably why New York say, no, we need this. This is a good story. Right. This isn't just a great player. This is somebody who wants to be here, and that'll take that New York critical fan base a little, it'd be a little bit more different with how they respond. So please continue.
Right, and so you get somebody who wants to be there, and then now they're looking at maybe trying to get Gordon Hayward. He just opted out of his contract with the Celtics, the player option. But that's what the Knicks need: a culture change. Get players that want to be there and want to be around for that change.
And can put up with what the New Yorkers give you. They say there's no media markets, no fans like New Yorkers, man. I mean, whether you call it rude by nature, but you would have to be from there, to be able to understand that and relate. But I'm happy to hear that about Obi Toppin.
And then the second storyline that I really loved was the 15th pick, Orlando Magic draft, Cole Anthony, son of Greg Anthony, former running Rebels, back in the day with UNLV with the Coach Shark. But I mean, just seeing him this story I think really caught me, really touched me a little bit because we got a guy who's projected to go, top 5 coming in with North Carolina, and he's having a great start to his season and gets hurt, and having to going through that surgery, and then this is a guy who didn't choose to sit out and get ready for the draft. He said, "No, I'm gonna finish what I started, no matter the record, because North Carolina, this is probably one of the worst seasons that we've
Yeah.
seen out of North Carolina the past season." Him not even worrying about the record, this guy comes back and it's like, "No, I'm finishing what I started," and comes back and plays pretty well. It wasn't many victories because the program kind of, I feel like, gave up, but like him, you didn't see one bit of quit out of that kid. I mean, he's gritty, he wants to win, and I think he may be a little undersized, but I mean, that's a lot of toughness out of that kid to want to come back and play still. And you could just see the emotion. Like, I wasn't really, I didn't know how much I'd be here. This is the toughest moment for me, going through that surgery and going through that time. Just to see that the Magic, I think that might be kind of a steal because I think he's a great player. I think he's a elite scorer. He plays tough on defense. He's a great leader. I mean, you could just see the whole demeanor change when he left, and as soon as he came back, they're getting competitive with Duke. That Duke game that went into OT, and
Yep.
that had like that hard finish for him. You can just see the fight and the grip in him, and it was just good to see that. That he was like, how, a little personal side of him. Saying like, it's my first surgery. I want to thank my parents for being here with me. You can just see, he felt he was a little underlooked a little bit. Going from top 5 and falling down to the end of the lottery status pick, and so. I mean, I thought that was a great pick by the Magic.
Still that guaranteed though, that lottery pick though. But then also,
Right.
I would think he's also playing with a chip on his shoulder for a number of reasons. His physical stature, he's a little undersized, and then he's the son of an NBA, and a basketball legend, if you will, Greg Anthony. Come on, give me a break. I don't care how you felt about the running Rebels or whatnot. He's next to the Fab Five. The Running Rebels, you know what I'm saying? That's like, whoa, put some respect on my name for real. So, having that kind of scrutiny, I would imagine, or whatnot. But I do think it says a lot. And I guess where you really see the payoff is when he got to sit down with those GMs, and talk to these guys and to say, well, this is my body of work. Yeah, I know I'm Greg Anthony's son. Yeah, I might be a little undersized, but it's like, look, this is what I've done. I came back and I fought even when my team wasn't winning. I still can't showed up. And I think what happens is when you look at a draft night, you hear some of these players, Terry talking about, I'll never forget this night and the moment. It's like, this is what all the work is for. So when you get there, you can say, this is why I'm here, and then also when you're interviewing, these general managers and these other, team influencers, and you want to better tell a great story. Look, man, this is how I worked. This is what I did. You don't want to go into that sit down worried about what people are going to better say about you, but we saw that. So you talked about those being the two storylines. We had the continued storyline with Michigan State. Everyone was checking for it. Xavier Tillman and Cassius Winston. I was able to snag the post-game interview with both X and Cassius, and I think there was an interesting theme with that because both of them, Terry, were very specific about the underdog status, falling to the round in which they fell, just like you referenced with Cole Anthony and whatnot. And they talked about Coach Izzo and the influence he had. So let me play a little bit from Xavier. We'll check him out, and then we'll just check back in. So give me a second. I'll get that going for you.
Okay.
I haven't talked to Coach since. He texted me, I think, literally like 5 minutes before I got picked. Like, you hang in there. I promise you everything's going to work out. But now let this, he said, let you getting passed up on in the first round be a fire, so you're always motivated to go out and get better. He said it's in DNA like us, or it's in our DNA, talking about me and him, to get passed up on, but to show people and put in the work. Yeah, he texted me like 5 minutes before I got picked, and then it kind of like kept my head up, and I was like, okay, I'm hanging there. Coach believes in me, I got it. I'm hanging there, and right, it's like literally like 5 picks later, I got picked, and I'm like, oh. All right, it wasn't that long, so definitely, yeah.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to go to Cassius too because their comments are so similar. So I'll go Cassius and we'll talk about them both.
Yeah, I heard from Izzo. He was one of the first to, I think he was probably one of the first to talk to the Wizards coaches. He told me how excited they sound, how excited they sounded that they could get me, that was coming to their organization, how proud he was of me, and how I've been in this situation before. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've been doubted before. I've been told things that I can't do and what things will hold me back. And I know what that situation feels like. And look what I made of it before. So he said he had full faith that I could go out there and do it again, keep having faith in my work, trusting myself, and go out there and make it happen.
Wow, Terry. Now look at that. On the biggest night of these guys' lives, they still have to, live the underdog story. Isn't that a crazy, juxtaposition of just life experiences? Like they talk about, feeling nervous until their name was called. And then when their name was called, it all went away and it didn't mean anything. But then even still, the storyline is, what I have to prove. Xavier went on and said that, he's going to keep that chip on his shoulder for every team that passed him up until the end of his career. So I guess what I'm getting at is, and this is kind of keeping in, stride with the SPSEdge show and what we want to focus on with mental toughness. How important is it to be slighted in order to be motivated to be up for a huge task? I mean, these guys are going to be getting up every day saying, look, man, you didn't believe in me. So there's like, I still got to prove to you. Now I'm amongst the best of the best in the world, getting paid a handsome dollar to do what I love and what I would probably do for free. Absolutely. But you still getting doubted, even when your name gets called. What do you think that's like, Terry?
I think, we always think of first of what motivation and like finding your why as like the go-to number one thing that you should figure out before you even have any kind of way of doing something. You should always find your why first. But then again, the first example that comes to my mind is, MSU being that blue collar, work hard, gritty school. The first example that I think of is Draymond Green. I remember he remembers the list of everybody that got drafted before him. And like, he remembers that to this day. Like, he can go off the top of his head right now and be like, boom, 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 and list everybody that got drafted. And I think Cassius, I mean, it broke my heart a little bit because it's like, this is somebody who is arguably one of the most valuable players in college basketball. Like, what you're gonna get out of Cassius Winston every night. Like, you might get maybe a 40 ball on a good like 30. Yep. He's gonna give you maybe like 28 and 10 on the highest level. I mean, we saw him against Duke in that Elite Eight, and we saw him play his heart out through terrible traumatic experience with losing losing his brother. I mean, we see him proven to be that guy. I mean, a lot of times people have been questioning his athleticism and his style of play, and is he quick enough to compete with those guards? I mean, I see a Chris Paul in him a little bit, and I think his play style is like very much like the NBA. I mean, Cassius may not be the fastest guy in the world, but he knows how to get to his spots. He's an excellent passer. Defense probably is something that he needs to probably work on. Now he probably say it himself. Izzo used to get on him all the time about defense, right. But I mean, NBA, they don't play defense. So I mean, my thing is that if he improves a little bit defensively and playing and getting better and continue to get more athletic and continue to pass well and having a great IQ, like that was one of the things that Izzo would always say about Cassius, his IQ. And I heard a story about whenever he went to go see Cassius play, and he told his mom, he was like, your son has a chance to be one of the best MSU point guards one of the best point guards MSU has ever seen. And I think, just seeing that and having him struggle his freshman year and be doubted, like we didn't know too much about Cassius. We were really cautious about saying he's going to be good and this and that.
Coming off the hype of the state championship at University.
Right.
We thought it was just a hype, right?
Right, and then moving on to being arguably one of the best MSU basketball players that they've ever seen. I mean, you can just see the growth, and I think he has a chance once again to kind of have that growth going through COVID and Washington loving his game and him having that chance. I mean, we see the guard play with. We don't know if John Wall is going to be okay.
Probably not going to be there, but you're right.
So, I mean, hey, it's a great opportunity.
We're saying we need some support in the guard position, because they try to get a vet guard that can come in and got him to be groomed after. And I think guys also like to take, guys being these NBA teams, like to take advantage of not just the player, but the colleges in which they come from. Coach
Right.
Izzo has an excellent reputation in the NBA for being, gritty. You talk about that with Xavier Tillman going to the Memphis Grizzlies, where they already had Jaren Jackson there, and he showed what that work ethic was like by just being there 1 year.
Right.
So imagine what Xavier Tillman's going to bring after being there 3 years.
That's what they do. That's what they do out there in Memphis. That's one of their biggest emphasis about playing, being gritty. You see Ja Morant. They got some rookies on that team that had that dog and that underdog, had that dog mentality coming in, and I think X is going to do great with that. I think having Jaren, be that big brother to him a little bit, and I think X is going to come off the bench, give him all the energy he can, like he did starting at here at MSU. And I think it's going to be a huge plus. I think that's a great steal. And X can guard. He can go on the perimeter and play defense on some guards for a little bit. So I think that was a great pick.
Yeah, no, excellent. And you talk about work ethic, man. That kid's gonna show up every day. I mean, people will refer to him as being older beyond his years, but that man is literally grown. He's a grown man with a family. You know what I'm saying? And he's
Right.
true
He
to
working.
his family.
Mm-hmm.
And if anybody's more deserving, both these guys are. So I was so happy to be able to see them, and haven't seen these guys on their journey, man, and be able to have, a quiet conversation with these guys, be able to talk about things that were positive and inspirational. I like to think that I've always able to be a positive person around them. So I'm wishing nothing but the best for Xavier Tillman and Cassius Winston. Cassius, familiar with his family, know his dad as well, knew his brother, but to see these young men transition is inspiring. I posted something on social media, man, and you can see the outpouring of love of people being happy for these guys to go on to do that, man. I think that's really, really important with what's going on. So we've been doing some good stuff, man. I want to keep with the theme of what's going on, man, talking about this draft and moving forward. But even with the same, I kind of want to go back to what we were talking about with Coach Mel Tucker earlier, that he kind of put out this all call throughout the state of Michigan and beyond that, hey, MSU was going to be recruiting a little differently.
Hey.
Michigan State University has had a reputation for only, recruiting in certain areas and things like that, and, kind of looking past so many people. So Mel Tucker, he's hitting the ground running, trying to stay connected. And I'm very fortunate to have been close to that, to witness that. So let me share his comments, a follow-up to his comments from our last, time that we talked with him. And matter of fact, I'll go back a little bit and give a fuller version. So this will be a little lengthy, but we got some time, okay?
Okay.
All right, here we go.
Knows how good he can be.
Thanks, Mel. Next question goes to Lindsey Huddleston.
Hello, Mel. I know you are laser focused on Maryland right now, but considering we're halfway through your first year this season, and there's talk of transfer portal and things like that, and you use terms like dealing in truth, what message can you give to the fans about the future talent transition that the Mel Tucker era is going to start to experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because we're battling and building at the same time. It's battle and build. So as we're developing the team that we have, we're also recruiting, every single day to bring in players that we feel like can help us be successful, on and off the field. So, we're doing that. And then obviously the portal is part of college football. You got the high school kids, and then you got the undergrad portal guys, you got the grad transfers, you have junior college guys. And so, we look everywhere for players that we believe are a good fit for us. And we look to acquire those players. And at the same time, when you evaluate your current team, ultimately you're deciding who's a good fit on this team. Who has the traits and the characteristics, talent, the toughness, mental and physical toughness, the attention to detail, sense of urgency, love of the game, who has those traits, those characteristics that you need to have on your team to be successful. And so, ultimately, there's transition, not only acquiring guys to the team, but there's also guys that, ultimately, may transition out just because of, there's a certain type of culture and certain type of
player that we need to have here, and that's really non-negotiable. So everything's an evaluation, and halfway through the season, right at this point, we have a pretty good idea of who can do what, and so obviously you can anticipate seeing some movement on our roster, whether it's portal related or otherwise.
Okay, now as a very quick follow-up, does that mean non-traditional Michigan State type players may have an opportunity to play here, or it'll just be something that we've seen before?
If you could just give me a little more clarification on that.
Just in my role, I'm in touch with a lot of young people, and people either say we've heard from a school like a Michigan State or Michigan, or we haven't even heard from them, but they may be very talented. So, I mean, are you turning over every stone, or is it going to be pretty much same places and regions as before?
No. We turn over every stone. We cast a broader net. It's a lot more work to do it that way, but we cast a broader net. Like if you want to sign 25 guys, it's typically an 8-to-1 ratio on offers. Like you got to offer 200 guys. We're always well over 300 offers per class, and so it could be West Coast, East Coast. We go down to the South. Obviously, we want to start here in our state. We're fighting for the hearts and the minds of our high school coaches and our in-state prospects as well, just to show them that what the difference is now, how we do things and compared to the past. And so and anyone that has a player, that we evaluate those players and try to get back to those high school coaches or anyone as fast as we can, and we're always on the phone, just looking for anyone that we think might have a chance, and we get the film evaluated, and so we're looking everywhere for guys every day, actually.
Every day. All right, thank you for that, Coach. Have a good day.
Yep, you too. Thanks.
So next question goes to Rico Beard with 97-1 the ticket in Detroit.
That out. Excuse me.
Hey, Coach, you spoke about the.
So that was huge, man. That got a lot of traction on social media. I shared that. You probably saw me sharing that, and just telling, I was pretty much telling coaches and players in the state of Michigan, hey, man, pick your head up because it's a new sheriff in town, and Michigan State is really about that life. They're going to be out here. He even gave you the numerical breakdown. Some are offering 200. We're offering 300. And I think what people get confused about is that the offer process is much different in college football than it is in basketball. But the fact remains that he's talking about we're evaluating players. So if you got a player, share us the information, and we're going to get back to you. So I think that was really good. But I think it's also important, man, because that's the type of message that should inspire people. That's the type of message say, you know what, I may not be a big name right now, i.e. Cassius Winston or Xavier Tillman. I may not be the guy everybody wants to get right now, but if I come and show, improve, and work hard and put myself out there, I mean, this is really at the core, Terry, of what, this whole movement that we have with SPS is about. If I really just, put in the work, man, if I show up for work, there's a chance a school like Michigan State will look at me and say, we like what we see, we want to give you a shout. So that's why my question to Coach Tucker, I said, is it going to be the non-traditional Michigan State student? It's going to be the student you wouldn't expect. Are you going to be are you going to not just be in certain regions? Are you going to just be all over and where you have to go? And he's committed to that, man. And I've seen evidence of that by his ability to reach out to these coaches and connect with people. And I just think it's really inspiring to see that, it's heartwarming to say, look, man, if you work hard, you're going to get a chance, and that's important. So what do you think?
I think you hit it right there. In the question, turning more stones over, I think that's the key. I mean, you see over the years, these big name players and that have great impacts on their teams in that transfer portal. I think a lot of teams don't usually think they can find much talent in there. But, I mean, we've seen it down there with Oklahoma and Lincoln Riley. I mean, over the years, we've seen transfer quarterbacks. So I think when I'm a reference to it, all started with Baker Mayfield. He was a transfer from Texas Tech. Then coming in, Kyler Murray, then Jalen Hurts. I mean, those guys weren't recruited there. So I think it's good to see that he's not really limited to himself to just the offers. People like, we're just going to go out and offer one. We're just going to try and find one. And it's good to show because, I mean, I took a reference last week during that Indiana-Michigan State game. Coach Allen is also having a ton of recruits come out of states that have SEC schools. So they're not limiting themselves as well. And I think that's very key when you're trying to rebuild something. You're not just like limiting yourself to recruits and trying to get more freshmen to come in. If there's someone that is, you know, well tuned in fundamentals and what they want there at MSU, and he's in that transfer portal, we're gonna go out and reach out to him. If that's something that we think is a need and something that could give us a positive, which I think they might do for the quarterback position next year, I think that would be key for them. I think that I'm glad he said that because he's making it known that like we're not going to settle here. We're going to keep evaluating every week, and I think that's very key for a guy, a coach that's talking about building and battling. Like in the behind the scenes, we're gonna keep building, but right now we focusing on battling. I think we're gonna see a ton of hard work being paid off as we start seeing these top guys start coming in. I mean, some 4 or 5 star guys, and maybe even some top caliber transfer guys coming into East Lansing.
Yeah, no, man, you were really getting to it, man. You're right. Battling for the hearts and minds of the coaches and players in our state. I mean, that line right there was in the Detroit Free Press. You know, it was like after I posed that question, the other reporters were like, "Man, he's really spitting." You know what I'm saying? So that put that out there. But I like how it put that fire up under people. Like, man, let's get to it. You know, and that's what he has to do. I think that's really his nice way of saying, "These are my players. This is the team I inherit." And I have a standard, and a lot of these guys wouldn't be playing for me. Let's be fair. And I like the fact that he's very frank when he says that, and it's evident. He's like, look, we're constantly being evaluated. And you notice that discussion started happening more going into week 3. Because I'm thinking that he was like, man, look, you know, we lost to Rutgers. Okay, first game. We beat Michigan. We turn around, and this Iowa thing happened, that Iowa train wreck. Woo, beating them down in Indiana. And then he's also probably seeing how his players are reacting. You know, it's not so much, you know, are you in a tough time? What are you doing at halftime? How are you responding? Is that fight in you? You know, are these guys ready to step up? Because again, one of the very easy ways to tell the difference between the Mel Tucker era that's going to be and what Coach D'Antonio had going on, these guys didn't run to every position when they were on the practice field. They said, we run everywhere now. And it was just like that subtle change probably is enough to tell a guy, man, I don't know if I want to be in this program. I don't know if I want for that. You know how that goes, Jerry. You out there, you had teammates, you know, that you having to be a leader, had to get yourself out there, and other guys don't want to push. Last one coming in, you know, and like, how can you be a great team if you have people like that? How can you be like that? There's no way. So I think Mel Tucker is excellent in communicating his point. But again, and I'll say another thing you better watch out for too. This might be another one you have to text message me on too. You might have to text message me sooner than anything else. It might be Michigan commit Andrell Anthony out of East Lansing High School. Maybe he might get flipped. Might get flipped by good old Coach Mel Tucker and be at Michigan State. I mean, it's right in his backyard. People don't know what the future of Coach Jim Harbaugh may be at Michigan. I do know some other Michigan recruits, and they tell me, look, we was going to Michigan no matter who the coach was. And these are huge linemen and whatnot. And I can understand that. They're like, look, I'm going to go play at the University of Michigan and I'm going to make my move. But someone like Andrew Anthony could be the same thing, but there's a different kind of personal connection because Michigan State is right here. Your teammate, Ethan Boyd, is going there. Y'all got this momentum going through the playoffs right now. Who knows? Y'all could potentially win the state championship. I mean, there's so many things at play. So I'll be very interested to see if the diligence of Coach Mel Tucker is going to start paying off sooner than we think.
And I think I'm pretty sure. I know, knowing Ethan and Drew, I know Ethan's probably in his ear talking about, "Hey man, you sure? You sure?" You know, I mean, it's teammates.
Well, I mean, think about what happened. Michigan State. Ethan wasn't even on Michigan State's radar prior to Coach Tucker getting there. You know what I'm saying? He was going to Cincinnati. He was about to go to the University of Cincinnati, play for Coach Fickle, and it's ironic because that was the person they were considering for the Michigan State job. He had to call Coach Fickle, say, "No bet. I'm going to stay here with Coach Mel Tucker. I'm going to be right here at Michigan State in my own backyard. I mean, that's like Obi Toppin playing for the Knicks. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, hey,
Right.
we'll see. And like I said, with the uncertainty of Jim Harbaugh, man, you know, and I'm like I say, somebody like Coach Tucker is being very diligent. They're going at it. You know what I'm saying? He's still at it. You know, he said, I got until you sign. I got up until you sign. So
Yeah, that's how you do it.
see what come for that. But it's exciting, man. It's exciting that amongst COVID, we're still able to see the competitive nature of things. You're able to see the guy who works hard get his just due. You're able to see kids live out their dreams. And I'm really so proud of these athletes throughout the state of Michigan right now with this play, pause. And the one post I put up after they paused for these 3 weeks until December 9th, like, look, man, keep your head up, stay focused, and be ready. I mean, what other way to display mental toughness is to have to pause from your play and stay in the mindset, no, hey, it's coming back. And then, you know, and I'm sure that many of them are very motivated because there was a time when we said, hey, we're not playing at all. We didn't even know what was going to happen. So with that being said, man, I really want to wish our young people in the state of Michigan, all throughout the country and the world, but particularly here at home in Michigan, you know, kudos to you guys for keeping your heads up, staying locked in. I hear that the restart may lead to all playoff games. That's all playoff games, Terry, being played at Ford Field.
Nice.
I hear that. And that's them saying, look, it's going to be too cold to be playing outside. If we pushing it back, hey, we bring everybody down here. And I like the idea because for me, that is more of a logistic. That's literally somewhat of a bubble. Somewhat, you know, because they can manage it. It's not about each site, each school. It's like the logistics of the NFL can be put into place. And I think that's a great thing. And, you know, yours truly with SPS will be there covering those games and bring you some of that. So, Terry, we've done it, man. We've kind of come, you know, to the top of the hour. We've been rocking for a good hour, man. I was excited about the things that we were talking about and the topics, man, because it's like when you talk about following sports, you follow, you know, the pulse of the world. I mean, there was a time a few weeks ago we were talking about social justice, and I'm glad that we had a platform. You did an excellent job in expressing the views of many young people like yourself and what they were thinking on both sides, you know, of the political aisle because of your diverse group of people that you're involved with, and that's a great thing. Coach Orlando Watkins, I want to thank you, man, for keeping us locked in, you know, keeping us out here on Facebook Live. Shout out to everybody on Facebook Live. Want to shout out to Easy Work, my guy over there, Bruce Tony, holding it down with Easy Work. We're going to keep some things going with Easy Work out here. And also to the Streets is Watching podcast. You can find us on www.thestreetsoftalking.com every Saturday and Sunday, 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. You turn on, you hear my voice, hear this young man, Terry McCord Jr., spitting the facts. And we're just happy to hopefully be able to inspire people. So with that, Terry, you got anything else you want to share before we get out of here?
No, just prayers for Klay Thompson. Again, suffered a torn Achilles, you know, in a workout, him trying to get back to where he was, and he gets injured again, another year-long season-ending injury. So hopefully speedy recovery, a great player, great attitude, another guy, underlooked, dog mentality, pushing through, fighting all odds. So prayers to him, have a speedy recovery, and hopefully he can get back to that Klay that we know he is.
No, man, that's really, you know, really great of you to say that. You know, prayers out to him, and that's part of the sports. We celebrate guys getting drafted last night, but all the same, you can have a season-ending, let's hope not career-ending injury, but that's how this goes. So we're very fortunate, Terry, that we're still able to stay connected to sports. We're very fortunate, Terry, that we're able to build a level of credibility amongst those in this community that we can bring a message that can help people stay inspired. So with that, this is Lindsey Huddleston and Terry McCord Jr. with the SPS Edge Show. I want to thank you guys for being here. I want to thank Coach Orlando Watkins for keeping us together. We call him Houston because he holds us down while we're out here in the world. So with that, we'll see you guys next week. And thank you for supporting the SPS Edge.